Hello, hello, my friends. It is September 1st. It is a holiday for little ol' me. It's a lovely day outside, not too hot, not too cold, bright and sunny, and I am choosing to spend this precious time talking at length about Weekly Shonen Jump, as I am wont to do. It's actually been a crazy busy August for me. It is not like I am not making the most out of my summer. It has been wall to wall activities, and I have not actually been reading that much manga, which I think is the ultimate proof that I have been busy, busy indeed. Typically, I've been on a pretty monthly cadence for my manga chat videos as well, where I go over other stuff I'm reading that isn't, stuff I'm caught up on and I'm just reading week by week or whatever. But more kind of substantial reading adventures. And don't hold your breath for one of those because there just hasn't been that much. I'm behind on my monthly manga club, which is unfortunate. This month they were reading World is Mine. It looks batshit insane, but I only had the chance to read like 3 or 4 chapters. But at the very least, I have been able to keep up with all the stuff I'm current on, including, of course, the entirety of Weekly Shonen Jump. It has been a pretty exciting month for the magazine. We had one pretty long-running series end, and since we've got a lot to cover as always, how about we just plunge in with that and talk about the ending of Kill Blue. Over its 115 chapters, this series had a few ups and a lot of downs for me. I was never a huge fan, but I don't know, it's like, I think at the end of the day, Fujimaki-sensei is good at writing characters, and he's good at writing action scenes, and he's good at writing small little slice-of-life comedy moments. And if you're writing a sports shonen, as he had in the past with the massively successful Kuroko's Basket, and I think the moderately successful Robot X Laserbeam, you don't really need much more than that. It doesn't really need to go much further than likable characters, quirky characters, some laughs, some heartfelt moments, and then big basketball sequences full of action and crazy happenings and what have you. Here, he went for a lot more. I really do get the sense that there was just this giant plot kind of fermenting in his brain the entire time he was writing these sports shonen series. And then once finally unleashed, he's like, okay, it's about a hitman who gets age regressed and goes back to middle school. He's reliving his middle school days, but he's caring for this girl who is the heir to a pharmaceutical company and knows all of their secrets, and people are trying to kidnap her. But actually, they're also trying to, like, vie for her love by becoming her fiancé, and he has to fight them all back, sometimes using guns, sometimes just using a variety of, like, sports and stuff. And here's a bunch of characters, and it's kind of like slice-of-life comedy, wholesome stuff. But it's also like they're trying to kill each other, and sometimes it's like supernatural, and sometimes there's like a sports fest. Just kind of like flinging ideas out of the hat. A weird mix of like stuff you could kind of tell he wanted to do going in, but then in very typical manga fashion, if the series isn't producing the results you want, you just kind of start swinging. You just try anything. I don't think the series ever really figured out what it wanted to be. It just sort of lurched randomly between modes, between genres, without any kind of cohesive rhythm. And then it just sort of ends. They had set up this whole big saga where Ogami was going to go around to all the student council members and win over their respect and trust, symbolized by them sharing a cup with him. Which would then allow him to be nominated for student council president, or I guess just straight up ushered into the position, I don't remember. It doesn't matter now. None of that happened. And that, of course, was a whole big convoluted plan to, like, convince Noren's dad that he was worthy of actually taking care of her. But keep in mind, he is, in fact, in his 40s and has an ex-wife and a child. So none of this was appropriate from the jump. It never really felt like they totally got a handle on their own premise. Like, they set all of this up very early on, and you're kind of just, like, waiting for moments to sort of pay off with it. But only really sporadically would they even touch on the fact that he's an old man, besides just kind of like surface level references to it, actually like getting into his psyche, the intense alienation that he must have. I don't know, it's just like, why did you do it then? Why not just make him like a middle school assassin prodigy, and that's a secret identity, and you still have this weird counterbalance between, I was raised with such harsh training and stuff, now I'm being plunged into a school environment, I don't know what's going on. Oh wow, it's actually like wholesome and lovely, and I love just being a typical kid, but I have this duty to kill, and I've been sent here undercover. And then you don't have this whole, like, freaking creepy thing where she's falling in love with a middle-aged man and doesn't realize it. And then turns out she's also an adult that was age regressed, called it, but she, like, lost her memories, so it was still just an actual middle schooler catching feelings for this guy. And then, I could go on and on. But in the first chapter of this month, in the lead up to this grand finale, grand not really being the correct word, but whatever, a character does straight up say, don't sweat the details. There's a couple random info dumps of the plans of the pharmaceutical company and the dad being like an actor, and they like wiped her memories and brainwashed her and age regressed her, all to get some secrets that don't really amount to much. And then his comrades, his weird assemblage of Nakama that are mostly also just like assassins and stuff deployed to the school. Again, none of them having to be de-aged. Well, now they age up, and there's like some battles. There was a moment that I kind of liked where we really did dwell on the tragedy of Noren as a character who just got put through the absolute ringer. Made a de-aged amnesiac, shoved back into childhood. They show her a lot of, like, sympathy in that moment. Then she learns that Ogami is de-aged as well and is actually an old man. Then they beat the bad guy, and then the base explodes. And that's your setup for the final chapter. Which I didn't think would be the final chapter. I could tell it was ending, obviously. I could tell from a couple months ago that, they've been told, hey, you gotta wrap this up. The student council thing, I guess, is just not working for people. Can you please just get to an ending? But I didn't think it would be coming this fast. Then suddenly we're in the final chapter. It is an extremely messy, extremely confusing ending. Where Noren says, I don't care that you're an old man, I still love you. And then Ogami goes on this like weird tangent about how there shouldn't be a power imbalance in relationships. And he's like, yeah, I thought it through. Huh? And I really don't think it'll work. So what do you mean you thought it through? What? So, like, they could have had it that she just goes on living as an adult and that they have, like, a totally fine relationship because they're both actually secretly adults. But instead, she remains a kid, gives him a little smooch, and then just goes on living as a kid, essentially just abandoning all of the memories of her past life, which is, like, a hellish sci-fi existential question, Like, if you knew that you had lived this entire life and then had your mind wiped, and now you're given a chance to go on living as the person you were before and essentially, like, bringing that lived experience to bear and allowing it to continue, and then she, like, chooses not to, and it's just, like, weird as hell because, like, I don't know, like, I guess that's legit, but, like, why is this in this manga? Why are they, like, suddenly on the verge of this insane philosophical conclusion? And then she gets out, Ogami somehow survives, it doesn't make any fucking sense. I was sure that it was going to end with him dying, because there had been this theme of him, like, atoning for the fact that he was a professional killer and feeling bad about all this blood on his hands, and he had this blessed opportunity to live an innocent life of a child and experience what a true childhood is. But then he feels bad that in the end he has to return to killing and blah, 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 blah. I was like, oh, okay, so he dies. And then that's kind of like a closed book on that. But no, he survives, and he also doesn't go back to being an adult. The final pages show that he is now just some sort of like middle school undercover cop going around to like different middle schools, and it shows him like beating up some thugs, and it's like, what the fuck? Like, what? Don't you like miss your daughter? You know, don't you want to go back to living as an adult now that they like know how? Like, I'm pretty sure they know how. I don't know, maybe I misunderstood that and he's like stuck as a kid, but like what the fuck? But he's not in contact with like Norin or the rest of them anymore. He's just kind of like off doing like the adventures continue type ending, but like why? Like, didn't he just decide that he like doesn't want to do any of this shit? Can't he just become an adult again and like go work for Toyota or something? Like, what? It's so baffling, man. It's truly baffling. I find myself returning to the words truly baffling whenever I describe this series. And this ending, very much in line. Truly, truly baffling. I think there will be an epilogue chapter in the final tankobon. So I'll read that, but, you know, for the purposes of this discussion, that doesn't count, so to speak. We're talking about Jump the magazine and the series that appear within the walls of that magazine, not what they get to do after. I am curious what the hell the epilogue will be. I guess I could see something where, like, Ogami grows up again, and Noren grow up again, and then they meet again as adults and have, like, a relationship. And that would be weird as fuck, because he still has, like, 40 extra years of lived experience, whereas she also had decades and decades of lived experience. I don't know how old she was when she got de-aged, but she forgot all of them. So she's, like, literally an 18-year-old, or whatever, whereas he's, like, a 40-plus 18-year-old. So I don't think they're going to do that either. But then it's like, what? Like, Noren has this, like, beautiful... I think they meant it to be beautiful, but it was very creepy. Moment of confession to Ogami and saying, I don't care if you're old or whatever. Are they just going to be like, well, too bad. You're not... It's not happening. I mean, they should, but, like, it's weird that they did that if there's no kind of, like, payoff to it, and Noren just doesn't end up with him. By the way... Do you remember early on in the series, there is a whole big thing about Ogami claiming that he's afraid of girls, and Noren saying that she's afraid of men. And for Ogami, you knew that this was just his cover because he was actually an old man and didn't want to receive the affections or be in awkward positions with all these middle school kids. And I was like, oh, okay, this is because Noren is de-aged. It's like a parallel thing. She's having the same sort of feelings. But no, instead that just has no explanation whatsoever. I think basically they had this idea that Noren was also going to be de-aged right from the jump, and they were aiming for that kind of cathartic moment where they both recognize what was going on, and then they're free to pursue whatever sort of relationship they want as both actual adults, you know? But then they like realized that they had written themselves into like too many corners with that, and there was like contradictions and plot holes and stuff. If Noren was actually a de-aged adult. But then they realized that they couldn't also just abandon that because there's also a lot of plot points relying on the fact that she was a de-aged adult. So then they were like, oh, okay, well, then she has amnesia. But I think that element was decided very late, and it really makes no sense at all. Yeah, not a great ending. I will say this, though, it's like a suitable ending. If this series somehow managed to pull off like a clean, reasonable conclusion where I'm like, okay, that makes sense, it wouldn't feel like Kill Blue. It wouldn't feel in line with any of the other nonsense that happens in this series. Remember the surfing girl with like split personalities that would like transform? What? Remember when they go to an island and fight robots? Remember all the like crazy high level assassin villains that had like there was the guy with like the invisible suit jellyfish thing. Like what the hell is going on? So yeah, I think in a sense this is the ending that I kind of wanted to see because it was just total nonsense and baffling, and I was like, there we go. I think if it had managed to have like a great ending, I would be in an awkward position where I'm like, wait a minute. Is Fujimaki Sensei actually like just cooking on some insane level that I'm not aware of? I'd have to really try to reevaluate the whole thing. But no, I think this proves sometimes you're just stumbling, man. Manga is a very unique medium where if you're making like a series of movies or a TV show or something, and you're kind of just like, I'm at a loss, you got a lot of options. Like, for starters, you can just stop doing it for a while. Then you can hand off things to other people. You have like a whole team of creatives backing you up. With manga, it's just like you and the sheet of paper. And if you're like, oh, I don't really know where the plot of my own story is going, too bad, man. We're gonna find out together then, aren't we? Because you gotta keep drawing. So I think this is an example of something that could only really happen with manga. And the craziest part of all, it's getting an anime. They announced that it was getting an anime at the same time that they announced that it was ending, which is kind of rare and pretty fascinating. I really didn't think it was popular enough to get an anime. It's been kind of just like a mid-carder the entire time it's been in Jump. But I suppose, those get animated as well. I honestly think the anime could be like pretty fun if they kind of lean into certain things. Make it really goofy, make it really silly, make it almost maybe a little more self-aware about all this stuff than the manga was. I don't think I'll watch it. But I could see the series maybe getting a cult following. Like, the characters are strong. The characters are likable. The premise is, like, weird as fuck, but I think there's maybe people out there that it would just, like, latch onto them for some reason. It does present kind of a unique combination of, like, I'm age regressing, I get to live through my childhood again, but this time I'm going to really enjoy it. That sort of, like, fantasy, which is very, very popular. Combining that with, like, the hitman genre, which is very, very popular, and this idea of, like, a hitman has to get out of the game and adapt to normal society, which is extremely popular right now. It might hit for some people. I don't know. I think this series probably does have shooters out there. I'm just not one of them. So I don't know. We'll continue monitoring the afterlife of Kill Blue. I'll probably talk about the epilogue chapter at some point. I kind of want to go through like a wiki or something and refresh myself on all of the crazy shit that happened in the series. And we'll see how the anime does, I guess. But yeah, we'll give it a C+. Not a great ending. It's sort of the opposite of Sid Craft, though, where Sid Craft had like a completely nonsense ending all the way up until the final chapter. And then the final chapter was like very by the book and safe and smart and sentimental and fun, and I liked it just fine. Here it's like they had a perfectly competent kind of like final battle arc, even though it didn't really make sense how we got there. And it seemed like it was building up to what could have been a down-the-middle, perfectly safe, perfectly competent ending. And then they were just like, oh, wait a minute. This is Kill Blue. We can't have two consecutive plot points that make sense together. So now Ogami gets to be the middle school defender of justice and roam around while he texts Norin, his child bride. Christ. But yeah, C+. It is what it is. Let's look at Slack real quick. Not Slack. Fun Slack. Discord. Alright, next. Let's talk about Blue Box. The Blue Connection. Of course, I just do these in a random order outside of ones like Kill Blue that I have particular things to talk about. So, we had this whole big school trip arc, which I quite enjoyed. Good focus on some of the side characters like Kyo. I really liked how they just depicted the fun of visiting a different place and doing touristy stuff, and some nice character moments in there too. Hina kind of got pushed back into the spotlight after, really having most of her substantial arc and her confession and being rejected. All that stuff happens quite early on in the series, so it's quite interesting to see her having this sort of second go, which is probably going to be like her finale in a sense. She thinks a lot about her relationship with Taiki. She indulges in happiness when he praises her, even though she knows that there isn't anything romantic or substantial behind it. I liked all that stuff. I don't know. As someone who's had, hopeless crushes and stuff before, I like kind of honoring those feelings and approaching them as like, well, it's not creepy, it's not intrusive and unwelcomed necessarily. It can be something just kind of like beautiful, something that you just privately hold for yourself and get meaning and significance out of, even though it's not going to amount to anything. So they focused in on that. It was really nice. And then the trip ends. Really nice chapter where Taiki visits Chinatsu after getting back. Her friend Karen is over. Really just lovely domestic bliss type chapter. Moments of sentimentality, thinking about her graduating soon, but really just kind of indulging in this sort of fantasy of this is what it's going to be like all the time when we live together, which again is like a really lovely feeling. I have that feeling right now with my boyfriend. We're planning on moving in together. And just little moments where we talk about stuff like that, or we're doing stuff and it's like, hey, this is probably going to be how it is when we live together. Really, really lovely. And then the sentimentality factor just keeps getting ratcheted up. A chapter where they're cleaning out the gym, reflecting on all the memories they'd made together in this gym. The mundane memories of youth is highlighted as a phrase where they're having this silly sweeping race, and even though it's totally mundane and routes, they're like, these are going to be memories as well. Surely this as well will be a memory of my youth. Again, this sort of Hina plotline is reinforced, that she wants to really have one last try. She doesn't want to just give up. In doing so, she sort of semi-rejects Haruto, which was a guy who'd been kind of orbiting around, trying to shoot his shot. I really liked how that scene went, too. That felt very mature. That she's like, look, I bought you something. I recognize that you're kind of into me, and I'm telling you that I'm a little into you as well, but I still feel this way about Taiki, and I want to see it through. And I was like, oh, that's like a conversation I don't know if I've ever really seen depicted like this in a rom-com. And then finally, the graduation chapter. Chinatsu makes the big commencement speech. It's full of flashbacks presented with this like fractal depth. And after you've done 200 chapters, you have a lot to draw on. And the way they just packed in successively deeper memories, and the way the memories were like interconnected and piled in within the frames. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. Intercut with panels of Chinatsu speaking, and everyone in the audience is reacting. Really, really nice stuff. And then it ends with this very poetic, lovely moment where they meet once again in the gym and greet each other with good morning, even though obviously it is not the morning, because that's their routine. I had a feeling of like, man, that felt like it could be the last chapter. That would have been a sensible, straightforward, down the middle last chapter that I would have been perfectly happy with. I mean, obviously there's a lot of stuff I still want to see. There's a lot of stuff that's unresolved. But just taking that chapter in isolation, thinking about what if this was the final chapter and it had cropped up at any point during the series. It's like, yeah, that's about all I want from it. Very sentimental, very full of the lovely spirit the series always had, accumulating in this wonderful full circle poetic moment of them encountering each other in the gym again. So very, very, very happy with that. Just a great month overall. We'll give it an A+. And let's move on to Sakamoto Days. Another very strong series for me. But lately, I don't know. I'm very invested in this kind of final arc. And I do kind of think, like, we talk all day about when series get into these sort of final arcs, people start getting into, like, a very checklist mentality of all the things they want to see before it ends. That can lead to, like, a lot of frustration, a lot of confusion, a lot of discourse and disagreement. This is a series that I think is actually, like, thinking about the checklists. Like, everybody's coming back, everybody's gonna get a battle, every bad guy is coming back, and they're just also slotting in new bad guy characters to make the numbers work out. It's gonna be a long final battle saga, to be sure, given that they're giving space and time to all of these characters having all of these final climactic moments. And there's a lot to get through. It's also kind of interesting to me that they're, like, having the lower level good guys fight kind of equivalent random mooks on the bad guys' side. You know? I think in a lot of other shonen series, it's like, oh, okay, now it's finally time for Heisuke to kind of level up and take on somebody who's, like, the order tier, you know? But no, because they already got enough good guys that are at the order tier to take on the new order, the evil order, right? Like, I think there's, like, kind of a respect for their own power scaling and a respect for their own kind of, like, logical consistency of, like, training arcs and stuff, to just be like, well, that would make no sense for Heisuke to battle, I don't know, the lightning guy. The lightning guy's way stronger than Heisuke. The lightning guy was going, like, toe-to-toe with Sakamoto. So instead, Heisuke fights a lady that can control magnets and a wrestler dude. And it's like, who are these people? Where do they come from? The significance of the battle is that Heisuke is just buying time so that Sakamoto can get away. He's heavily injured. They've got him in this ambulance. They're trying to get him somewhere to be treated. And it's like, you know, that's not super high stakes, really. Like, it is, obviously, because it's protecting the main character's life, the titular character's life. But it doesn't really come across in terms of the significance to, like, Heisuke, right? Like, this isn't some long-held grudge that he's finally resolving. This isn't, you know, him taking on an opponent that seems way stronger than him, but he's going to have this moment of self-actualization or something like that. It really is just, like, lining him up with the enemies that make sense for him to fight. Similarly, after that, this really psychotic police officer shows up and kind of ambushes them at what looks like a security checkpoint, but was actually a big trap. And to tackle the policeman, Lu comes back. Lu of the Wu-Tang. Do you remember her? She had just been working at Sakamoto's for, like, a million years. I had heard before that both Lu and Nobura in JJK seem like they were written in... Somebody had this theory, that they were written in so that you could present it to the readers and to the Jump editors as it's the classic Jump guy-girl formation. Naruto did it, Bleach did it, One Piece kind of did it. You gotta have two guys and a girl. Here's your girl. And then it was like, well, we don't really have anything for them to do, so Nobura's gonna go into a coma for like 10 years or whatever, and Lu is gonna work at the convenience store until now. But what's funny is that Nobura came back and did, like, a super fatal blow to the most powerfulest enemy ever. She, like, contributed in a major way to the top level highest stakes fight. And Lu comes back and fights, again, a random mook. Literally just some random unnamed police officer who evidently is actually secretly very strong, and they set up this whole trap around him, so it's not like I'm going... It's inappropriate power scaling. In fact, it's almost like too appropriate power scaling that they put Lu right on that spot. They're lining up all of their pieces like in an auto battler. Not only Lu, but then Granny Mia, who's like the underworld doctor, has shown up quite a few times. I think in the past it was implied that she used to be some sort of legendary assassin. She's actually quite skilled or whatever. So it's time for her to fight as well. I think it would have been totally fair if they're like, yeah, guess what? She's like super strong and she takes on somebody from the New Order and she's actually at that level. But there's like such a sensibility to all of it that no, she fights the policeman too. So that was our month. Those two fights, as I said, they're quite arbitrary. They're quite checklisty, just kind of bringing back characters and giving them something to do. It's fascinating to me that they like don't want to lean more into just sort of shonen bullshit and have them have some sort of remarkable connection to the person they're fighting. Oh my god, you're the cop that arrested a whole bunch of the Wu-Tang family members. Oh my god, you're like a patient that stiffed me on a bill. Oh my god, you guys... Actually, I think there was some sort of connection with Heisuke, but not really that significant of one. Instead, they're just kind of like, no, these guys are fighting. And that's how it lined up. It's your round one pools match. There's no fate or destiny behind it. I respect it in a way. It's just sort of also kind of like, well, okay. But whenever it seems like shonen series and Jump are just kind of going through these types of motions, I'm actually okay with it. One, because it feels like they're charging up the energy for the more significant fights later. They're getting this stuff out of the way so that you can focus just on making those later fights as pure Kino as possible. Moreover, this is the mode the series is great in. All of these little random fights are fantastic. They are already super Kino. Awesome, great spots, full of all of them. The Heisuke doing the traditional trick shot stuff, the magnet lady and the wrestler both having very cool, very quirky powers, his weird obsession with just tanking hits because that's manly, the way he doesn't want to be perceived as like the heel and he's like, hey, you're making me look like the bad guy because you're so like selfless and heroic, but I'm the good guy. And then all the fighting with Lu and Granny Mia. Lu, of course, doing like the drunken martial arts stuff. Mia using all sorts of crazy medical tools in her fighting. Great shot with Lu spewing booze and then Mia throwing in a lighter for a big fireball. Good stuff, man. Good stuff. I don't know. It's like very solid right now, but like I said, I feel like this is just kind of charging up energy for the higher level, more significant fights later. And again, it seems like they do have the checklist. Stuff people still want to see in Sakamoto Days. And they're going through the checklist. But let me tell you, for readers, it's an infinite checklist. You're never going to be able to check off every single box for every single reader. It's a fool's errand. Just do what you want. I guess this is what they want. I don't know. Anyways, give it an A. Good stuff. Let's see. We're going to talk about RuriDragon next, which just had 2 chapters, which is pretty typical. One that was very nice slice of life stuff. Ruri trying to get up to speed with studying and stuff. She finds out that the older sister of her friend met a dragon once, which feels like, again, the series is very teasing, very tantalizing about like lore and world building, that they aim for this sort of like realistic cohesiveness where, yeah, of course, Ruri is occasionally going to meet somebody else that knows about dragons because they are like a real thing and a real species. Her mom isn't the only person who's ever met a dragon, although her mom did a little more than meet her. meet the dragon. But, I think it would also be kind of realistic and grounded if Ruri was like, hey, give me literally every detail you have. Show me like a million pictures and stuff. And you can say, oh, okay, well, that's not really like her personality or whatever. But like, she's not even like conflicted about it. She's just kind of like, that's neat. Again, it's just like always kind of skirting around the outer edge of lore. And then in the next chapter, they dive full in. After that kind of tantalizing thing, maybe they figure, hey, we've like strung you along with this type of hinting, grounded world building without really ever tackling the full ramifications of this is a realistic Japan where also dragons exist and all of the apparent contradictions and stuff there. Ruri has a change of heart and decides she wants to learn all about her dad. And they don't even show us the scene where her mom informs her on any of this stuff. They skip through it. And at first I was going to be a little peeved because I'm like, surely you know that the readers want to know this stuff. I know that there's kind of like a thematic thing in this series of like, yeah, she's a dragon, but in the end her life is pretty normal. And therefore it's like almost this incongruent with the rest of the series to really dive into the lore. But like at the same time, you gotta recognize that there's gonna be like fan desires to know. But instead, they are gonna tell us, it seems, Ruri begins a presentation on dragons, which I think is actually a pretty cool way to do it. Kind of like situates us more with one of her classmates than her herself, which reinforces this idea that by learning these things and by kind of embracing her draconicness, she is becoming further and further alienated. While at the same time, you get to know her better as a person, and all of her classmates to get to know her better as a person. Now there is this gulf. She knows all this stuff and they don't. So we get to see it from that perspective, from the class's perspective. And then she drops an insane bombshell, which is that her mom said that dragons will destroy the world. And that's where it ends. So pretty exciting chapters, not, giving up entirely on that very grounded slice of life feeling, while now fully kind of wading into the world of lore and world building, which I have been eagerly awaiting. Again, it's like I think it's a cool theme, just having this be a thing on Ruri's mind alongside a whole bunch of other things, I think that's well conveyed in her sort of indifference to a lot of this dragon stuff and not always being so eager to learn. But I also just think the series has done everything so well so far. Like, I've just been so impressed with the writing in general that I'm just really curious, what is the world they're going to build? What are dragons? What are they going to look like? What is dragon society? How do they live? How did any of this stuff happen? I want to know because I think it'll have a very cool, very satisfying, very compelling answer. And we might actually start getting those. I don't know. We'll see. We will see. So yeah, we'll give it an A for the month. Good stuff. Moving right along to the Elusive Samurai, which, like Sakamoto Days, is definitely in its grand finale arc. I think it will be a pretty grand finale, but things are moving a little faster than I thought. I kind of thought that this would be the opening kind of transition into the final campaign saga. Like in the past, they've had these long multi-arc, multi-battle sagas, of their journey westward or their journey back eastward or whatever. Whereas here, it does seem like it may actually amount to not that many major conflicts. Like, we might be closer to the end than I expect. I don't know. But some crazy stuff is happening. I'm really enjoying this. I think this is... this could end up being like the peak of the series as this finale. Largely because Takauji as a character, I think, is so fascinating. And the way that he's been built up from first this just like scummy opportunist to a legit tactical mastermind to this kind of charismatic cult of personality leader to now literally like a god emperor with this malevolent god residing within his soul and giving him supernatural luck and preventing his death and leading to all of this insane good stuff or insane bad stuff happening. Good stuff. That was a weird slip. I think I read the word good on my screen. Major turning point where Takauji, this was talked about and foreshadowed in the previous month, but finally kills his brother Tadayoshi. This leads to an insane internal conflict where finally he recognizes the weight of his losses, the weight of his sins. He cannot deny the fact that he has his brother's blood on his hands. This leads him to spiral inwardly. It's very poetic, very terrifying, quite grotesque and insane, depicting the god being driven from his body, that their kind of psychic warfare plan is starting to work. But, of course, he still has a military force. He's not going to just go down easily. They have now put him in a position where he may be mortal, but they still have to kill him. So the final battle is becoming all good guys versus all bad guys. It's time, Tokiyuki has a sizable army of comrades that he's assembled over all these years. Pretty much all of the remaining villainous characters have solidified themselves with Takauji. It's time! They did another one of my favorite things in the series, which is kind of look at miraculous feats that happen within the contemporary annals of history. This is another one where a message seems to have been delivered faster than is humanly possible at that time, which again contemporaneously was explained by these mysterious Tengu. And here they depict the all-night journey of their Tengu ally, and all of the insane things she does in order to make this line up time-wise. Not, entirely suggesting that this must actually be what happened. Not entirely suggesting, though, that it wasn't. Just sort of playing with that distance from history, with the foreignness of history. Thinking about, what the hell is this thing? Then we start getting into the fighting itself. They start having all these skirmishes with Takauji's forces. I really, really like that they focus on this idea that Tokiyuki's forces are going to fight with levity. That is the one thing Takauji lacks, is the ability to enjoy combat, to do things frivolously, to do things for the fun of it, to attack and retreat at will. There's a lot of moving pieces in this section, a lot of ground that's covered. I think it's sort of like in history, there were actually quite a lot of skirmishes and battles between these two forces that they just don't want to cover for whatever reason. They just kind of, I think, want to keep the momentum going through this final arc. But it accumulates with Hojo once again occupying Kamakura, coming completely full circle to the very opening incidents of the manga, which is very, very cool. They have a moment of sedimentality to acknowledge that, but again, the momentum of this and the pacing, I think, is quite runaway at this point, which I think is fine. I'm not complaining that they didn't kind of rest here for longer. They already had quite a long sort of nostalgia-driven section in their return to Suwa. It wouldn't make sense to kind of go through all those emotional beats again. And it's just sort of well, that's how the history lines up, is that you would have to have those sequences back to back. But it is what it is, so they're back in Kamakura, and now it's the final rallying of troops, the final equipping. They have a cool scene where everybody gets new weapons for this final battle. Tokiyuki decides to have children with his wives finally, now that they've returned to Kamakura. He believes that it'll finally happen. Crazy. The 3 wives thing. Still crazy. Whatever. And then, probably my favorite scene of the manga, they talk about a recruitment drive where they're requesting allies from a neighboring force. And Nika and Tokiyuki themselves, these very senior, high-ranking leaders of these forces, don't send messengers. They send out themselves. They ride out themselves. And a really, really lovely, again, kind of fourth wall breaking historiography analysis where they're saying, like, there's a record that they wrote out together to deliver this message instead of using messengers. It's not really clear why, but from a writer's perspective, it seems like they just got along well. And it's so nice. Like, this it's all like historical fan fiction or whatever, but just finding the seed of these incidents and trying to put yourself in the headspace of those people from so long ago, just from their actions, and thinking, well, surely if they weren't friends, why would they have done this together? And just relishing in this resurrection of that great hundreds years old friendship, you know? It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So yeah, we'll give it an A+ for the month. It's really cooking along now. As I said, it may be closer to the end than I think. I don't know really how much is left to happen, but it looks like they're gearing up to battle Takauji's forces head on. And then what I'm really curious about is, like, this series has always had very strange little lapses into, like, casting things suddenly far into the future and talking about what sort of person Takauji would be if he was born today, having these vivid hallucinations of how tropes and stuff that are being depicted in this historical setting will be seen in the modern times. That was a joke very early on that they harped on about with Sua having these visions. It's like, are they going to go really crazy at the end? I think they might. I think you could just keep it safe and have a very sentimental, triumphant ending where I don't know what happens. I haven't read the history books, but, you know, it all happens within the historic universe. Or you could go insane with it. And just kind of thinking about Matsui Sensei and thinking about how Ass Class ended and all of the, like, strange things, very poetic things and crazy revelations near the ending of Ass Class. I don't know, man. It might get kind of crazy, and I'm excited for it. Either way, I'm here for it. All right, let's move on. Still got a lot of series to cover and talk about Ping Pong Peril, which is perpetually near the anti-pinnacle, trying to keep the alliteration going not well, of the table of contents. I don't know if it has long for this world, but I have been really enjoying it. I think it's actually quite good. It's just such great sports action. The premise, I think, is just very expertly built to kind of get you to all of these crazy ping pong battles, and then it just really relishes in the strategy, the tactics, the back and forth escalation, problem solving and counter problem solving that is depicted so well in racket sports, with all of the twists of the Ping Pong Peril, and then just a lot of really great, compelling action too. So in this month, it's so efficient too. We had 2 battles. They really don't waste much time in between. The bathhouse battle with all of these insane torture baths that they have to avoid. The bathhouse attendant using all these strange inventions she'd made. Very quirky, very fun character. I like that the kind of accumulating moment is that she's devised all of these schemes and plans, but he's kind of like too stupid to fall into that line of thinking, and instead kind of like escalates and overpowers through his raw ping pong talents. Very good, great escalation, great climax. A nicely lighthearted finish too, where even though, you know, she lost, she helps out. They had been continuing this lie with his sister. She can hear the ping pong ball over the bath wall, and he's claiming that it's just a deer scare. It's a weirdly fast, desynced deer scare that's operating on this insane timing. And then the bath attendant, his opponent, builds that right on the spot in order to give proof to the lie. And I was like, that's great. That's a lot of fun. I'm swapping autism toys. I tired of playing with that one. Yeah, so I really enjoyed that little arc, that little battle, and then we jump right into the next one. As I said, very efficient, up against his previous ping pong club advisor. So already there's a bit of weight there with his whole backstory of just kind of quitting after he recognized how painful it is to lose and how much pain he was thereby inflicting on his opponents. So this is kind of an opportunity to re-examine that aspect of the character, but again, they don't also lack for an opportunity to make it crazy. He's a chemistry teacher. He has this weird doping serum that he injects himself with. We find out that it's pure testosterone. I don't really think that's how testosterone works exactly, but whatever. I really like, again, they nail this feeling of like shifting protagonist, where at first you're more in the headspace of his opponent, trying to figure out how to counter his insane ping pong skills. And then once he starts busting out these techniques of hallucinating that an anime girl is talking to him and having insane amounts of power, being able to do the real zero bound shot. You know, our protagonist was able to do a shot that barely bounces, so it's impossible to return. But then the professor, all doped up and jacked, slams the ball down and it embeds into the table. That's the real zero bounce shot. Great, I love it. And then, you know, once he's able to master that, the perspective shifts back to our MC. How is he going to overcome this in turn? Really, really great stuff. Just exactly what I want from these sorts of racket sports, these sorts of dueling sports shonen series. Yeah, I don't know. I hope it continues. I don't know if it will. I think it's probably on the chopping block right now. And it's not too surprising to me because, I don't know, it's not really typical Jump fare. I think it's kind of for like the Fukumoto sickos in a way. I still kind of feel like it has that energy. I think it ought to have a place in the magazine. I feel like it has kind of an attitude and an excitement that nothing else in the magazine has right now, but we'll see. We'll see. Give it an A for the month. Ooh, next let's talk about Witch Watch, which was very, very exciting this month. Plot. The plot has been progressing once more. We have arrived at the end of childhood. The re-aging arc has begun. At long last, Nico will return to becoming her normal original age, which is like 17 or something. I don't even remember. They didn't spend too long with her in her like early teens arc, you know? And I think the reason why is that it's just sort of like inherently gonna be a little creepy, I think. This whole idea of she's regained her feelings enough that she's in love with Morihito again. But Morihito is like 5 years older than her or whatever. It's just inherently inappropriate, and there's really not that much you can do with it, I think, while still kind of remaining not creepy. A lesson that Kill Blue should have realized immediately, and then instead spent 115 chapters failing to come up with something to solve it. Here, I think they realized, hey, there's no good solution. They had a couple very cute chapters, a couple kind of nice looking at those feelings of early crushes and stuff, and then we're like, okay, we've kind of hit the limit of this. Let's move on. She's gonna age up fully again. But this kind of finale to her childhood, her thanking them for taking care of her all this time, the letters that she writes, Morihito being so aloof and trying to act indifferent, just this thick, syrupy sentimentality that still has the great edge of comedy, that still feels like the characters, you know, not that everybody is shifting gears into some weird melodrama mode, but instead just having the full weight of this significant moment, this change in their lives, come to bear on them as they really are. That's the good stuff, man. That's the real keynote of this series. Nico finally makes a full confession to Morihito. She breaks down his true character, all of his foibles, all of the ways in which she loves him. Oh, it's so good, man. It's so good. It's so good. To me, this is the real peak of Shinohara Sensei's writing. The expert comedian, sure. Great at coming up with like weird ass battle shonen-y plot lines, which pop up in Witch Watch occasionally. I'll give it to him, for sure. Great at depicting all of these weird otaku cultures and obsessiveness and stuff, like a real gamer. I love it. But when he operates in this sort of sentimental mode, when he goes for the heartstrings, that's when he is at his best. And that's when Witch Watch is at its best too. Really, really great stuff. After that, we shift gears rapidly back into comedy, of course. Great chapter about how now that Nico is gone, they all live extremely slovenly. And then they try to use these magical aroma oils to overcome their gross tendencies and get things back on track. But of course, it leads to disastrous ends, a little BL fan service. Really great contrast with this previous heartfelt chapter, just full goofiness. And then, I think aiming for another quality that this series does really well, and that Sket Dance really did really well, we get a school council president election arc. Looks like this will be a multi-chapter affair with both Jekyll and Morihito running for the seat, Morihito doing it for purely selfish reasons, trying to use its power to get Nico a pass so she doesn't get expelled, because as a side effect of her suddenly re-aging, she is in fact very stupid and won't be able to pass the exams normally. I think that's a great setup, great premise. It's going to be a lot of fun. I think they do really well when they have these kind of arcs. Sket Dance had some phenomenal ones. Some of them around the student council elections as well, and the succession there. So yeah, really looking forward to that. I don't know how long it's going to go. It might just be 1 or 2 chapters more, but that's fine too. And then I assume after that we're going to get kind of an equivalent glimpse of Nico living in the witch's village, having suddenly regained her age, but not quite her wits. See what's going on there. I think, there's going to be kind of some substantial stuff. And then more significant moments coming. When she gets back, Morihito has promised to give her an answer to her feelings. So we'll see. We'll see what all happens. It kind of feels like we could be heading into the end game. I don't know. Of course, there's all this stuff with Jura and the Immortal Warlocks and the prophecy to deal with, but that's never really been the major focus of the series, even though it is the major premise. That could get wrapped up pretty quick. It's unclear to me if we're going to have another stretch of just like totally wacky, totally irreverent, episodic comedy chapters, or if now we are in plot. I don't know. The save money is that we're going to get some silliness. That's how the series has always been. The classic. I hope you'll forgive us if this month lasts a very long time. There's lots of fun to be had before October, just fully fourth wall breaking, acknowledging that when they need to, the plot will just slam on the brakes and we'll have a lot of fun times instead. But yeah, if the brakes don't get slammed on, there's a lot of stuff going on. But we're going to give it an S- for the month. Really, really good stuff. I just love these sentimental moments from Shinohara Sensei. And if the series really is kind of squaring up with its long time coming conclusion, I'm happy with that. It's been a great series. I'm excited to see where it goes. All right. Next, we're going to talk about Kaedegami. This is a fairly recent series, just coming up into double-digit chapters now. And I'm starting to quite enjoy it. I think there's a lot going on here that's pretty unique within Jump. Just this very, Chinese setting, this unique fantasy zone, this strange tone of kind of horror, but then also kind of fetishy intimacy. And And they're starting to be a little more ambitious too. I think it must be doing well because the author has really shifted gears into, hey, this is like the big overall arc of the story. Here's a bunch of characters. So we'll see if they're able to pull that off. I don't know. I think it's got potential. So they were fighting this tiger Shenhui that had this zombie army and is in command of Chiyu's hand in their quest to get all of her parts back. She goes in this crazy berserker mode. The choreography, I think, in the series overall is like good, but not amazing. Jump certainly has better drawn fights out there, but it is like unique. There's some kind of cool, creepy imagery and stuff that gets evoked. This dude is throwing heads around and everything. So I don't know. I wouldn't say the battles are like the strength of the series yet, but I think they are kind of like figuring it out. And of course, like as the characters get more powerful and get more techniques and you start building up that kind of visual language of, what the character can do, I think that's when it starts being able to be better. So we'll see. So they beat the tiger, and then right on schedule, the big endgame enemy shows up to go, well, that was just some fucking scrub. I still got all your fucking parts or whatever. Or no, she doesn't. They have this like old grudge. She's trying to get revenge on all of humanity. Then the good guys show up to kind of parry that because obviously they're not ready to fight this endgame enemy yet. They go away. Sure. It's all very by the book, kind of how you expect this sort of stuff to go at the outset of a shonen series these days. This is the normal kind of table stakes. This is the sort of outlining and setting. And then even more by the book, of course, that good guy represents an organization of good guys. And at first they go, a human cooperating with a Shenhui? I've never heard of such a thing before. I think they should be exterminated because it's too risky. And then they go, no, we're actually good guys. Here, let's have a little morality test and we're good. And then, okay, well, I guess you'll join our organization and now we're friends. How many times have we seen it? But they did it again and it was fine. I did really like this little scene where they're having one of their members explain like the overarching plot and their quest. And they're like, you're really good at it. You're really good at the presentation. Just, okay. And then she like gets into costume and they have like slides she's performing in front of. Very funny. They introduce a whole bunch of characters here. This good guy squad. So again, kind of ambitious, they're trying to set up some characters, some future plot lines and stuff. Some good little silly moments, trying to front load the character quirks so that you're interested in them and curious about them. It's always risky, it can come across very flat when you just have like a panel or two each. But I think they did a pretty good job. It's interesting, Ichi the Witch had basically like the same chapter. We'll talk about that later. But it is, a pretty routine scene in Battle Shonen. You gotta set up your elite level good guys, and you have just that brief window to kind of introduce them and make them hype and make people excited for them. So I'm always kind of curious to see what sort of techniques they use, what sort of personalities they highlight. Because it's always a blend of like suggesting an archetype you've seen before, so you kind of get, it's that type of guy, it's the aloof guy, it's the goofy guy, it's the sleepy guy, it's the mean guy, it's the big jugs. It's like you kind of gotta like hone in enough that people get, it's that kind of character, but then you gotta give it something like a little unique, you gotta like step outside the lines just enough that they're like, but maybe I don't totally know who this is. So yeah, all good. Nothing crazy, amazing. The choreography and fighting and stuff isn't like mind blowing, but I think it's getting there. We'll give it an A- for the month. All right, next let's talk about Shinobi Undercover, which has finally wrapped up its very long, I thought quite tedious Shinobi squad fight, including a whole month-long fight between Yodoka and Hayabusa. It's over. Now we can go do something else. And I don't know how this series is being received. Like, it got the cover in the latest chapter, and it seems like it's always fairly high up on the TOC. But they made some moves here that feel kind of like desperate and panicked. Insofar as they had the counterpoint to the elite good guys show up scene that we talked about, they had their squad of bad guys introduction scene. And since some of the members of that bad guy organization had fairly substantial arcs to themselves before, I kind of thought, oh, okay, this is like laying out the next few years of the series, is that we're going to fight these guys like one by one as they each launch their plans. No, they all showed up at once, which is never like a great sign in terms of the longevity of your season. It's like you got this hand of cards of all these villains that you've slowly accumulated and drawn up, and you're teasing them one at a time, and then suddenly you're like, boom, all down at the table. Now, obviously, I don't expect all of the bad guys to get beaten in this arc. I'm sure it's going to be like tactical retreat, and then they start emerging again one by one or something. But I don't know. It seems a little desperate. You don't have to do something like that. But yeah, they're having this like little fireworks festival date kind of thing. Our main character, Yoroka, finally admits to himself that he has feelings for Aoi. It's kind of nice. Some good kind of like character exploration there. But nothing too well expressed, I think. Pretty shallow, not that interesting, not that unique. Just don't really think these characters have been built up enough for that to have a lot of emotional significance to me. But it is nice, I guess. Like, it doesn't feel like they took that sort of scene lightly. It felt like they at least have a vision for who this character is and how he would kind of process these feelings. I think that kind of respect for your own character is really good. It just didn't do a whole lot for me emotionally, at least. But I do like that this marks the return of, during his battle with Hayabusa, he unveils his exciting new technique. I love this, the putting that aside for the moment technique to help him focus. But this realization of his feelings makes him have to spam that technique, essentially, putting a taller and taller pile of things to the side that starts shaking and threatening to battle, to I keep saying like random words that I can see on the screen, to topple over and collapse on top of him. Which I thought was good. I think that's like a good kind of representation of this very neuroatypical person and his flawed but best he's got coping techniques, you know? Then they make some sort of reference to some like secret about Aoi, like why they're looking after her, why she requires such an intense security detail. That was weird to me because I thought like we already knew. Right? Like, didn't they explain that right at the start of the series? It never felt like there was some kind of like compelling mystery to it. We were just told, oh, she's like an important person and she might get ransomed, and so we have to look after her. So I felt that was kind of weird because it wasn't really like foreshadowed. It wasn't like that was a question that needed answering. And I'm not really sure where they can go with it. Is she going to be de-aged? Is she going to be a woman that got de-aged and she has amnesia and she actually owns all of the secrets of a pharmaceutical company? Are they just going to like swoop in on Kill Blue's plotline? I don't know. Whatever. And then all the bad guys show up, like I said. All the bad guys attack at once. It's going real bad. They kidnap Aoi. The tower of stuff he had set aside indeed topples over and collapses in on him. But that sends him into this kind of Unit 01 berserker mode where he is totally oblivious to everything happening around him and is just fighting instinctually. And I gotta say, like, this series does have solid battle scenes. I got a little less interested after they introduced Tekai, because before I liked that it was just kind of like your traditional ninja techniques and stuff, like early game Naruto. But then, like, late game Naruto, they started having, like, superpowers. And zap, zap! I was like, okay, fine, wow. Electricity power. That's exciting, man. You're telling me you can shoot out lightning bolts? That's crazy. So, I'm, like, a little less enthused about the fights now that they become kind of more like that. But they are still well choreographed. They still have a good kind of sense of speed and weight and impact and stuff, so... Yeah, I don't know. I'm excited to see him fight in this, like, berserker mode. I think they'll express it well. So we're going to give it a B for the month. I think it's, like, fine. Nothing crazy. Nothing really interesting. But nothing embarrassing either, you know? They're going through all this stuff, I think, well enough. They just don't really have that much originality behind it. Okay, next. Let's talk about Hima-ten. We had a major focus on the new character, the older woman, a staple of Jump rom-coms. You gotta have your 3 main girls and then your older woman girl. And maybe throw a couple more in later, who knows. So yeah, she, as expected, turns out to be teaching at their school. As expected, she turns out to have like a hidden drunk slob personality that becomes a secret between her and the MC. As expected, she takes on the role where she kind of knows about these crushes and this love polygon of unresolved feelings, but as a wiser older woman, she is content to just kind of look on and go, ara ara. As expected, as expected, as expected. This is how you write this kind of character. The fact that she's like a former idol to kind of fit in with the whole like showbiz aspect of the series makes sense to me, even though in the canon of the series it doesn't make any fucking sense. And then basically all of our main heroines get into a panic about her stealing away our main character Imori. It doesn't, like, I think this series is always teetering on the edge of stupid disease, whereas like Blue Box has proven itself to be on very firm footing. These guys kind of keep strolling over towards the edge of the big stupid cliff and whoa, whoa, whoa. almost fell off the edge of stupid cliff. And I think its worst tendencies are that in moments like this, it's like all of the main characters just lose their heads. And I suppose in a sense that's realistic, you know, teenage love, everybody's kind of stupid. Hell, even adult love, you get pretty stupid at times and weirdly insecure and jealous and stuff. But I don't know. It would be like one thing if it was that arbitrary, you know, like an authentic stupidity of the characters to panic. But instead it feels like very counter to kind of the ways their character have been established up until this point. It just seems kind of nonsensical. I don't know. Random moments of fan service, of course. Although the series overall has been pretty tame, this cover notwithstanding, sometimes they just like throw it in very randomly and awkwardly. I think because it's not like a super fan service series, it feels all the more awkward when it becomes one. So yeah, I don't know. That was kind of like, oh boy, this whole jealousy over Himenono. But then some good stuff emerges from it too. She gives some advice to Kana about how to be more assertive, which felt good and not stupid, and just talking about, well, look him in the eyes. That makes more of an impact. It's like, that's true. And it's nice. And it's not like bad advice. They really lean into kind of like the awkwardness of her trying to be assertive. And it feels like actually real to her character as established up until this point. She's not just like running around like a chicken with her head cut off, but is being cutely assertive and trying to overcome things that she feels awkward about or scared about or whatever. It was good, man. It was good stuff. Of course, you know, it wouldn't be a harem rom-com without inexplicable roadblocks to characters just frickin' telling each other how they feel. Even though she was all ready to confess, now there's this weird roadblock that doesn't really make any sense, but whatever. Still good stuff. Then we have a Kana chapter, which was actually surprisingly low in fan service, even though they had the perfect opportunity of looking at bikini catalog books, looking at Hime no No's bikini release and like talking about it. They don't even show it, and I was like, wow, that's surprising restraint. But yeah, so Kana goes out to help him buy birthday presents for his younger siblings. They're twins. It's very cute, very nice. I don't know, pretty light, pretty insubstantial, but some nice moments of intimacy, a feeling of kind of like escalating closeness and physical affection. This is the stuff that the series is good at. and I think it can really stick to that level where it's not like mind-blowing, it's not amazing, it's not that emotionally resonant, but it's like cute and it's nice and it respects the characters and doesn't have them be like idiotic parodies of themselves. So we'll give it a B for the month. Not its absolute best. A couple kind of cringy, annoying parts. But it still is not falling off the edge of stupid cliff. It might still. I don't know. It's run for about a year now. There's a lot of rom-coms run for a lot longer and get a lot stupider than this. So we'll see if it can hold off those tendencies. Next, let's talk about me and Roboco. Truly one of the pillars of Jump. Elusive Samurai might be ending soon. Witch Watch might be ending soon, for all I know. Sakamoto Days is definitely ending kind of soon. Roboco, though, going strong. Again, with these gag comedies, all we can really do is talk chapter to chapter. There's not like that substantial arc kind of narrative we can talk about. First chapter, they visit Bondo's grandparents. His grandparent is very anti-Roboco. Dog is going fucking crazy out in the hall. They translate a lot to the word clanker, which is an interesting kind of like meme phenomenon happening right now. People that are like really, really anti-AI and stuff have been saying it very aggressively in situations where it's like the AI working at the Taco Bell drive-thru or whatever. And it's like, don't get me wrong, I can get behind those sentiments 1,000%. All of this like rapid, desperate attempt to commercialize AI is just so infuriating and so pathetic and so annoying. Just like the least efficient solution to all of these problems that don't actually like exist. No real meaningful improvement to anyone's life. Just dragging people down into the mires of stupidity and technological dependency. I hate it too. But the use of clanker is like weird to me because people are like excited for the idea that it's equivalent to like a racial slur, that they're eager to use it in situations where they get to kind of like pretend to be racist against robots and be like, you fucking clanker, shut the fuck up, and get that kind of like aggressive caricature at what is legitimately a good target. It is the true enemy of people, but in doing so they're kind of like pantomiming and becoming a caricature of somebody saying similar things to like a racial minority, right? And there's like a lot of instances, a lot of memes, a lot of jokes around like robot characters saying, you can't use the word clanker with the hard R. You can say clanka maybe if we give you the pass. Stuff like that like directly equates it to the N-word. I'm like, what are we doing here, folks? Are you really so excited to be able to say your safe version of a racial slur that now you're just like eagerly trying to make it as analogous as possible? It's a little weird to me. It was surprising to me that they used it in this translation so much, given that it has this sort of like problematicness, or what I, from my woke ivory throne, think of as being a little problematic. It's a little sus, maybe. I don't know. It's not the worst thing in the world. And it is like probably a very good translation insofar as the grandpa was probably saying something like that. But I'm just like, I don't know, guys. This whole clanker thing. What's really going on here? Anyways, that's a huge tangent. Fun chapter. Grandpa, of course, eventually comes around. Then they do an Akane-banashi parody. That made me very, very happy. It's different than some of their other parodies insofar as it seems to actually take place in the world of Akane-banashi. A bunch of characters from the actual manga show up and critique Roboco's Rakugo. It's very fun. Some good kind of like iconic moments from Akane-banashi being regurgitated and parodied and stuff. They definitely understand kind of like the flow of real Akane-banashi. Very good stuff. I wish it kind of went a little further though. I wish it was a little more like kind of transcendental. To compare it to like the Akagi parody, first off, it's just insane to me still that Roboco did an Akagi parody. Who is that for? It's only for me. But there they like aped the chapter for a while, but then there was like just a major focus on like Roboco's very silly mahjong that she was like making up weird hands and had these weird tiles. And there it kind of became this like sort of transcendent thing in and of itself. Whereas here, it's like, okay, Roboco sucks at Rakugo and doesn't know what she's doing, but that's almost sort of like glossed over and taken as just sort of matter of fact. And it's not like there's this sort of, again, transcendental scene where we go into the world of Roboco's strange Rakugo in a way that like parallels the heights of Akane-banashi. So I don't know. It was good. It was really good. But I wish it had gone even further. I wish it was like multiple chapters, honestly, so that they had time to really make it like a full parody and try to like go into that space of wacky Rakugo and not just like, haha, it's Akane. You know what I'm saying? I don't know. After that, they went back on their horror shtick. They do this occasionally. There's a character that's super interested in the occult. I like these because they genuinely try to aim for spooks, I think. They actually try to make it pretty freaky, adapting, you know, Japanese creepypastas and internet folklore and stuff, and it's fun. I don't think this was their best one. Felt a little anticlimactic, felt a little plain, but whatever. Good stuff, good spookies. Then finally, a very fun chapter where Roboco gets a disciple. Many misunderstandings, many instances of chaos, and I don't know, it goes kind of the way you'd think. This little girl that idolizes Roboco and dresses up like Roboco, and all the weird things that Roboco teaches her. Yeah, I don't know, good stuff. And that chapter had some random 4-koma at the start, which I don't know why they suddenly threw in a couple 4-koma follow-up things, and it's like a lot of comedy manga do this, where at the end of the tankobon they have 4-koma that are like afterwards or kind of bonus punchlines for some of the previous chapters, and it was kind of like that because it pays off some stuff from like earlier chapters, but it wasn't in a tankobon, it was in the actual magazine, so that was weird, but good, funny. Anyways, we will give it an A for the month. Very good. Love me some Roboco. May it run for a million billion years and be the next Koshikame. Alright, now let's talk about Nue's Exorcist. In the past, I've gotten all worked up, angry, talking about the moral degradation of children, talking about the trickery of being the one truly fan servicey manga running in the magazine and skewing the votes and all of this stuff. Folks, let's make ourselves a peace treaty here. I wasn't that mad about Nue this month. It was like a real manga. They're in the middle of this gigantic climactic battle against one of the Hyo. This is what the whole series has been building to. The battles against the other Hyo. Creatures on the tier of Nue, you know, the most powerfulest villains yet. and they've kind of like stripped away all of the scheming and pretense and stuff, and now it's just sort of raw fighting. The weird like daughter character of the Hyo that Gakuro was like supposed to marry, and they claimed she was pregnant and all that stuff. She has her kind of like defining arc moment of self-sacrifice and heroism and stuff. In fact, she has like 3 this month. They just kind of keep doing the same beat with her over and over again. Sure. And then there's like fighting. and Gakuro actually fights. For a long time, he'd become kind of like a Pokemon master and just stood around while a variety of summons did their thing. But no, he actually like fights, and there's like choreography, which is exciting. It does bother me. I made a note of this because it's really starting to bother me that everyone says "you're women" in reference to like 4 characters that are all part of like Gakuro's harem. Gakuro, but you won't protect your women. And then the good guys are like, Gakuro, your women are safe. It's like, I don't know what it is in Japanese, and maybe this is like me being overly woke or something. Maybe now I am on like the opposite side of the localization discourse and being like, they're making it too not woke. But it's like weird, awkward phrasing to me. It really just kind of like makes me think of all the like really creepy and unpleasant aspects of the series, all the really like harem-y, light novel-y bullshit parts of the series. And in a chapter where otherwise it's just kind of like fighting and stuff that's like fairly enjoyable, just this like weird phrasing takes me out of it. Anyways, so then they keep fighting. They find out that this Hyo, she'd been fighting with ice powers the whole time, but guess what? She actually has fire powers. I actually always like that cliche that it's like, you thought I was ice, but I'm just using the ice to control my true power, which is fire, because the fire is too dangerous. I like that. It's a cliche, but it's like a badass one. And her firing up with all the fire powers and stuff, pretty sweet. Again, it's like, damn, this is an actual fight. There's like actual choreography. There's actually a sense of stakes and escalating stuff. It's not just like fucking training. It's not... There's like actual things happening. There's a callback to the stupid wedding ring thing where it's like, whoever is the most suitable for Gakuro will get the wedding ring at the end of the training trip. They give it to the daughter of the Hyo or whatever. Then she sacrifices herself again. Oh my gosh. But this time they hint that she actually has a deeper connection with Gakuro. Which should be like, oh, that explains why she was so stupidly loyal to him and willing to throw away her entire life in order to protect him, even though she was assigned to kill him. It's because they met once when they were kids or something. But like, the thing is, this manga is so full of other women who just throw themselves stupidly at Gakuro for like no reason that it didn't really need explaining, because I was just like, oh, well, there's another one. So I don't know. Then there's a whole bunch of like lore jargon being shouted about barriers and, oh, they have the capability to like deploy an anti-barrier. I don't know. And then Gakuro like transforms again. He has his Pokemon eat another attack or something. It really feels like a parody of Battle Shonen. I'm not gonna lie. Just like the convenient transformation and the I'm gonna sacrifice myself for you. No, I'm gonna sacrifice myself for you. and the childhood connection and everything. But I will say, a parody of Battle Shonen, something that's like so stupid it feels like a parody of Battle Shonen, is way better than harem light novel bullshit, which is what we get most of the time. I would take 1 million of generic Battle Shonen before I read some more of that sewage. So I'm relatively happy with this. This is about as good as this series gets for me. We'll give it a C- for the month. It is what it is. And that's not much, but it's more than it was. It's not actively offensive right now. It's just a little stupid. Okay. Moving right along, let's talk about Oter of the Flame. We had the finale of this Dwarven Forge arc. It's the most substantial arc so far. The bad guy, in the end, sacrifices himself to foil the scheme of the other bad guy, who showed up and ran away when the other good guys showed up. Very kind of typical stuff, but I think it was well conveyed, this moment of self-sacrifice. Had this kind of like poeticism to it, recalling warrior epics. The series kind of keeps going back to this idea of, like, what is a warrior in this pseudo-Norse culture, the honor of dying valiantly, their Valhalla equivalents, and blah, 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 blah. But I think every time they return to it, they use it to kind of inject some sort of like freshness and newness to what's otherwise pretty standard beats of a battle shonen. At the end of the first chapter of this month, they're like, okay, we need to go find all the spirits before the enemy does. We need to speed up our plans. Now, as somebody that's been reading everything in Jump for a while and seen a lot of series go to an early grave, that's somebody who's looking into their near future and seeing a big axe swinging down on the conveyor belt. Chop, 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 chop. And they have started to make strategic, agile moves to be like, all right, let's try to squeeze in as much plot as we can and either use that momentum and use that excitement to cultivate an audience, or at least get ourselves into a position where we can have a somewhat satisfying conclusion. That's sort of like rapid hedge betting. And similarly, suddenly we get thrown into kind of the main structure of the series. We're joining a party of 9 heroes to catch the spirits. We're up against the 6 big bad generals or something. I guess there's only 5 now. It's like a race to capture all the bases, that FPS game mode. And I kind of enjoyed it. It felt like very like boom, 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 boom. Okay, let's get this all on the table so you get it. But it had like a good feeling to it. Like the rush of the pacing was actually kind of exhilarating. I felt sort of aligned with Oter, who suddenly has been thrust into this party and brought along on this big quest, and the question of whether or not he's a hero, whether or not should just live peacefully as a kid. All of that is now kind of swept aside in this frantic rush up into the plot itself. I like that. Then they go to this village to try to track down the wind spirit. I really liked how this was depicted. It was a very cool mix of kind of like fantasy world building while also highlighting what are in actual real world like fishing villages, but presenting them both with a spirit of freshness and excitement, as Otor had never been to such a place. So yeah, I really like when a series can do that. Bring in both elements that are totally fantastical, like they have, what is it, like giant squirrels or something? Some like big animal helping them at the docks or whatever. But then they show like drying fish in the sunlight or hauling in a big catch or whatever. Real world things, but with the same kind of magic, the same kind of excitement. Peak. I love that. Some good kind of comedy shenanigans here. The pace slows down a little bit. But they have this really like weird impulse. Like, okay, I get the rush to establish there's 9 heroes, there's some number of spirits, this is what we're gonna do. But there's like a similar rush to like kind of preempt all surprises. Like they're like, oh, the fire spirit has amnesia. The fire spirit actually used to be like super, super strong and super, super powerful, but you can't recover its powers because it has amnesia, and you gotta like track down other spirits that knew it to like re-imbue the memories. And it's like, okay, that's kind of table setting. That's sort of showing where the plot is going to go and hinting that eventually it's going to get strong. But then they're like, the wind spirit is one of those. It's going to know your true nature. And I'm like, why tell us that now? Wouldn't that be something that's totally fine to leave as an exciting surprise at the end? Picture the cliffhanger. Fire spirit, I knew you before. Let me tell you of yourself, and in doing so stoke that immortal flame. Oh my goodness, that's wonderful. I didn't see that coming. But no, they're just like, this is what's going to happen at the end of this arc. This is weird to me. Weird instincts. Anyways, then there's a bit of an info dump about the wind spirit. I thought that was kind of neat. The idea of it living alongside the heroes of this seafaring society and providing them fortunate winds to go out and sail and stuff. Nice. The descendant of that hero, I think, is well established. He's a little silly, a little cool. They do these like otaku jokes where both him and Oter are super, super into myths in like an otaku kind of nerdy way, in the way that we would be into like comic books these days, or Sentai or whatever. I guess Sentai is probably the biggest parallel they're aiming for. It's like, alright, that's like fun, but I think if you do too much of that stuff, it starts to like cheapen the world building, you know? There's not a real sense of it being like a foreign place, but instead it's just sort of like Control F, Control H, every kind of human culture, real world culture with like a funny thing in their culture. I think a bit of it is fine. A bit of it is actually very fun, but too much of it and you're kind of just like rolling your eyes. And then the next enemy general attacks. As I said, the pacing. I'm trying to get through this. He's like this invisible guy. He's very uncertain. They showed a scene before he sets out of him being like really desperate and freaked out at the prospect of actually fighting. Oh, that's fun. And now they gotta fight this invisible enemy on a boat. Sure. That's where we're at. I'm enjoying this stuff, though. We'll give it an A for the month. It's definitely flawed. It definitely has a lot of strange instincts about the order in which you should tell a story, the like doing things you don't need to, not doing things you ought to. Simple stuff, man. I don't know who's editing this, but they should be like, hey, have you read like a battle shonen before? Can we have a conversation about the order in which you show training and the order that you have surprises? You know this word surprise? Would you like to include a surprise in your manga? But other stuff is like really solid. Like the art is great, the character designs are great, the action is great, the setting is great. The overall quest, I think, works perfectly fine. It's pretty cliche, but whatever. I don't know. I think it's solid enough, but we'll see. I think it does see the axe in its future. It's acting accordingly. Well, so we'll see what comes to pass. Alright, now let's talk about a series I feel very, very good about. Harukaze Mound. This series I am just loving more and more and more with almost every chapter. I went to go see a baseball game a couple days ago. The Toronto Blue Jays are having an excellent season by our standards, at least. I think we're like number 1 in our conference, maybe top 3 in the league right now, which is phenomenal for us. The game we ended up seeing was kind of a wet fart. We just lost, not even in that exciting of a way. Just a very slow, low-scoring game where at a critical moment we gave up 2 homers and then it was just over and we never came back. But given that the game was like minimally entertaining, we had a great time. I went with my boyfriend and another friend of ours, chatting, laughing, having a few beers, having a few dogs. It was Kino. It was great. A beautiful, beautiful afternoon out. The weather was immaculate. They had the dome open. You could see the sky. You could see the CN Tower. It's like, man, this is what it's all about. So I really want to get out to more games. I could see myself becoming a very big baseball fan. And it's like, yeah, that was all with the game really not amounting to too much. Almost every other game we go to, I think, is going to be more fun than that at that level. So, yeah, baseball, great sport. I love it. And I love the way it is depicted in this manga. I think that was a big part of me getting enthusiastic about baseball and wanting to go to a game, is enjoying this series so much. Now, I will say, like, to me, the most interesting thing about baseball is in the strategy and tactics and kind of the psychological warfare of the pitcher versus the batter, and this battery of the catcher suggesting pitches and stuff and kind of being the strategic mastermind. It's awesome. It's so cool. I can't think of like really anything else in sport that's like it. It's like a weird fighting game with two extremely different characters that are aiming for very different win cons, but have to come up and clash against each other time and time again. And watching it live, I was totally unable to appreciate it on this level. To be fair, we were way up in the nosebleeds. The players looked like little miniatures. They were great seats, honestly. I really enjoyed that view, and just being able to see the whole ballpark at once was really cool. But I could not tell at all what kind of pitches the pitcher was throwing. I could not tell ever what was making the batter swing or not swing. I couldn't tell why some pitches resulted in grounders and why some resulted in pop flies and stuff. Like, all of that totally lost on me. I think it would be a lot easier like watching it on TV with commentary. But as I said, I still really enjoyed it. I just wish I could also bring that feeling from manga and manifest it into actually watching a game. I think that would make it super, super compelling. Anyways, yeah, so this series is all about that duel between the batter and the pitcher and all of the psychology and narrative and everything behind it. Not only is it about that, it is about it on a meta level. They talk about that being the way you should look at pitching. They talk about that being the driving force of baseball itself. So yeah, this idea of pitching telling a story, and then our main character unleashes his secret weapon at the perfect point as ordained by the scriptwriter, which is the catcher. This is conveyed super, super, super well through just awesome shots of the pitching itself, but also just feels so cathartic having seen the strategy being built up over several chapters and then this big climactic moment where it works. And I think what's so critical and so awesome and just gives me so much hope for the series is that I genuinely didn't really know right up until the end whether or not it would work. Like, I think there is a world where they still orchestrate this whole plan, but at the end, the batter manages to get his bat on the ball, manages to, through sheer luck even, stay one step ahead and actually return that final secret weapon pitch. That would also be, like, insanely satisfying. That would also be, in a sense, cathartic. That would also branch out into, like, a whole other direction the series could go emotionally at that moment. That, to me, is, like, when sports shonen really grasps me, is when there's that ambiguity where both results would be so complete, so correct, and you really don't know where it's going to go. So not only am I happy with how it ended, but I'm like happy with how it could have ended differently, if that makes sense. So that's great. So yeah, they have this big unleashing, and then there's this awesome moment where the big batter enemy that had been built up a bit, Ataru, keeps fighting and manages to get a one-handed hit, like extending out the bat by breaking the two-hand swing, getting on it. But even that was anticipated, and it's like the feeling of seeing the plan that you knew about go through its motions, but then finding out in that crucial moment there was also a secret plan that you weren't privy to. That's a big, exciting surprise. Ah, so great. Our heroes win. Beautiful, beautiful stuff. This is, to me, sports shonen. This is what I want out of the genre. So good, so kino. Really just as good as it gets, I think. Nah, not. I mean, like Eye Shield 21. That's kind of as good as it gets. But this is really good too. This is really, really good too. And it's just starting. There's so much room to grow still. So then they have their kind of post-victory stuff, talking about what happened. They expand the cast a little bit. We get a manager character, always fun. We get new uniforms. We start setting up our future enemies. They all have cool epigraphs and personalities and stuff. It's the Grim Reaper picture. Ooh, it's the Calculating Genius picture. Ooh, it's the third one that I don't remember right now, and I didn't write it down. It's really solid stuff. It feels a little checklisty. It feels very much like they're just going through the motions. But man, it's like Jump hasn't had a sports series that was like capable of operating on that level for quite a while. It hasn't had a series with the momentum to try to set up that sort of stuff in a while. It hasn't had a sports series that is so content being this type of sports series that it wants to kind of just set up future enemy archetypes like that. And so going back to that mode, going back to that structure as tried and true and worn as it is, really feels refreshing in this moment. Really feels like something I haven't seen in Jump in way too long. Ooh, it feels good. So then they check in with his brother. Again, very obligatory. This is when that would happen. And at first I was like, all right, we're going through the motions. But they actually bring those scenes out quite a bit more than I had anticipated. Just like the sincerity with which they look at the brother character, the depth that they give this relationship, the moment where they call each other and reassure each other and motivate each other. This idea that the brother hadn't really had a fire lit under him, hadn't really made his pitching passionate. This being treated not as some sort of totally insurmountable character defect, but instead like, oh, well, now he'll have the opportunity for that. Now he's in the big leagues, baby. Really good stuff. Really good stuff. Just really fresh. Such a great, positive, emotional attitude. And the way they conveyed the brothers' pitching, the way they actually showed his pitching versus our main character, really, really great stuff. Like, I think they're doing such a great job establishing these as, like, rival characters, establishing their counterpoints. And now we are heading into a recruitment arc that our catcher, kind of mastermind character, has his eyes set on a big hitter who gave up baseball for some reason. So yeah, another pretty cliche sports shonen thing, but I have a lot of faith that they're going to execute it well, that they're going to execute it with this level of just great, fresh attitude and with such character depth and everything. Really, really good stuff. I was not at all prepared for this to be so good, I was like, oh, okay, I do want some more sports series in Jump. I would love to see another baseball series in Jump. It's been quite a while. And I was just like, let's just have it survive. Let's just have it exist. And that would make me happy. But no, it's actually phenomenal, man. We'll give it an A+ for the month. Really, really good stuff. Next, let's talk about One Piece, which is in the depths of another multi-backdoor flashback. We thought it was going to be the Loki flashback. Instead, it was the Herald flashback, but instead, it's the Rocks flashback, but then that also is kind of the Roger flashback part 2, and also the Shaki former Pirate Empress flashback. More her flashback than anything lately. And now it kind of looks like maybe it's going to be the Shanks flashback too. Backdoor into backdoor into backdoor into backdoor. It's been great. I've really been enjoying this. I love the way that Oda depicts this kind of previous era of piracy, where not only is it literally like the previous generations of pirates, but they seem to embody like a more classic mode of pirating, more kind of stereotypical piracy and stuff, to kind of just reinforce that feeling of like this is a bygone era, that Luffy was out there with fucking robots and stuff. Although some of them are ancient robots, that's whatever. So really good stuff. Lots of mysteries explored in this flashback. That for me is kind of the peak, where they kind of waltz into world building and suggestion of possible plot lines in the distance, like this idea of a continent full of frozen giants where ores came from. It was already hinted way back in Thriller Bark that this sort of thing exists, but now it's kind of slowly emerging into a potential spotlight, into a potential direction that something could go in this series. Tons and tons of like aura farming moments with young Rocks and young Shanks, or not young Shanks, sorry, young Roger. This whole love triangle between Shaki and Gloriosa and Roger and Rocks and Raleigh, more of a love quadrangle or something, but whatever. It's really good. It's like interesting to me though, because a lot of this stuff I don't really think needs to be shown. And like needs is an odd word, but a lot of this stuff I really don't think is going to be relevant to the ultimate mystery of what happened to Harold, right? A lot of this stuff might not be relevant to anything that happens in the current day plotline. But it also might. And it's like really unclear to me which each is in a lot of cases. Because I think Oda knows that some of this stuff can just be pure fan service. It's just stuff people want to see. They want to see these legendary old characters. What are their personalities? What were their relationships like back then? Let's see the moment where these guys meet. Let's see the moment where this gets established. Let's see the first time such and such happens. And that's just pure fan service. That's just showing stuff the fans want to see. And that's already fine. That's like already worth it to me. I enjoy that. I'm a fan. I like to be serviced. That's just kind of like cashing in on building up this world and this timeline and these old legends for decades and decades at this point. But at the same time, it's like knowing that all of these things could also become really plot relevant. It's a little weird, and it just sort of feels at once like, write that down, that might be important, but also like we're kind of just like futzing around and having fun for the sake of it, and being pulled in those two directions. It is kind of strange. I feel it most with this whole like love triangle stuff, that I think it's really meant to be like entertaining in and of itself, right? And it is. It's fun. It's goofy. I love Oda's commitment to never having characters that are too cool, too badass. So of course Roger and Rocks have to be falling over themselves in this really silly love triangle with their overwhelming affections for Shaki. But at the same time, I can't get over this feeling of like, where the hell is this going? What is the point of all this? This feels just very like tonally weird to have this like back to back with like Rocks and Harold fighting, or like this dreadful looming incident of God Valley and all of the atrocities that surround that. It's strange, just very strange. Then now we're gonna have the backdoor flashback with Shanks too. Shanks' mom seems like she's going to be a significant character. There's like a whole lot of stuff that like needs to happen at God Valley. And it's kind of like, man, this is like all a flashback. We're still in the middle of Elbaf. We're still in the middle of Emu attacking Elbaf. And it's like, why are we spending like almost full chapters worth of material talking about all the pirates that are super in love with Shaki? It's just like bizarre to me. I don't know. So it's good, but these feelings are kind of like nagging, I guess. And I am kind of feeling like, okay, where is this all going? But yeah, it's still really good stuff. It's still gonna get an S plus for the month. I'm really really enjoying this. But yeah, I can't wait for it to get to true peak. What that is, I don't know. It's when they drain all the oceans and the ancient continents reemerge. That's gonna be good because that means I'm right. Okay, next let's talk about Ichi the Witch, which continues this sort of inter-arc moment back at the Witches' Society. We had this whole little plot line of Komugi and her sister. Spica is extremely horny for Ichi. That was fun. That was funny. That was a fun kind of like character juxtaposition. This whole setting of the debut ball, Ichi's grand announcement to the world as an official male witch. That's been fun setting. This whole trauma between Komugi and her sister, not really that interesting. I'm gonna be honest. And I feel like that was the big emotional thrust of this little mini arc, was her standing up for herself and declaring her true intent to join Ichi's crew, to be the official recorder and note taker, to preserve the journey like that. It's like fine, and I kind of like that they examined this character in a little more depth. But just this whole like kind of like sibling rivalry and guilt and trauma and just the archetypes of the characters and how they interact. It's just like so kind of cliche at this point that it's really hard for me to get that invested in it. But it wasn't bad either. Like some nice moments. Um, and then at the end, the big accumulating moment is that they ask Ichi. Spica comes on strong to Ichi, and Ichi repeats, "You're not my type," which causes her to crash out and freak out and feel terrible. And then we find out that he was just told to say that whenever he felt like somebody was in his personal space and he didn't get why. By Des. I thought that was great. Great kind of like funny, both climax and anticlimax. And then they seem to have just kind of wrapped this up. So I don't know. Not I think the strongest stuff of this series. This sort of like character work. I thought this as well with like Gokuraku and his sister. It's just like fine, but it doesn't really have any of the freshness or excitement that other areas of the series have for me. It feels kind of like uncharacteristically sort of trite and routine. But we just kind of got through it. So it is what it is. And then we jump into the next plot line. We do a little world building. We have the top ranking witches convene, some of them, but then also the absent ones explain their absence, which was very fun. I talked about this in the Kaedegami wrap-up section. But it's very, very interesting to me. You know, it's a Battle Shonen staple to introduce like the high-ranking characters, the high-ranking good guys or the high-ranking bad guys. And typically when you do that, you only have a couple panels to work with at most. And all you want to do is like imbue a sense of both familiarity and mystery, such that you kind of get what archetype they fit into, but you are very curious, how does that archetype translate into someone who's actually very powerful, or what's with this one additional quirk you kind of throw in, this one kind of step outside the lines. I think they did a really good job here. I all of the high-ranking witches really interest me. And I hope that the series continues having the success it has, and that we get time for all of those high rankers to have arcs and stuff. It could be really good. All of this is in service of speaking with the Oracle Magic, who was introduced before the previous arc, who has like this kind of testy, shaky alliance with the human witches. But then has a prophecy of the world hater magic coming and killing her So I don't know if that's going to be kind of like a further plot point that they've hinted at and started foreshadowing, or if that's going to be the focus of the immediate next arc. But they're setting up a few things, I think, in parallel motion, which is good. Shows they're ambitious, shows that they've got a big picture of the scope of this series, which is great. That's right, Witch is great. Ichi the Witch is great. I don't know. I am really enjoying this. I think it has had its stumbles. It has had moments where I certainly would have written it differently. I think it loses sometimes momentum that it's done a very good job at building up. But overall, I am very, very happy with it. And I am very, very excited to see where it's going to go. So we'll give it an A for the month. Next, let's talk about Ekiden Bros. Another one of these refreshingly straightforward sports series that were introduced recently, along with Harukaze Mound. And yeah, I don't know. It's fine. I think it's getting better. I think it's getting into the mode that it really wants to be in, which is like just depicting races and getting deep into the psychology and tactics of running within those races, which is totally fair. I think that's what most sports shonen wants to do. Gonna get a little drink of water here. Yeah, like most sports shonen wants to just focus on the sport. Like all of the other kind of characterization and all of the other things happening outside the track in this case, it's secondary. So I don't really want to judge it until it fully gets into that mode, which it did this month. First, we had some stuff around him moving into the dorms of this university. Fun character. Their team manager is this like hyper gyaru, but she's surprisingly hardworking. They set up that the first big relay race of the 3 kind of lead up races to the Ekiden proper is going to be against the school where his dad works, where he grew up in their dorms. And when that happened, I was like, oh, okay. This means that they could end it after that race. This is them hedging their bets, kind of like Embers did, where it's like, okay, well, we'll have the first race be like the most emotionally cathartic. So if that ends up being the end of the series, it's still a good ending. And if we get to keep going, then it's just sort of like the starting pistol, so to speak. They have this big emotional catharsis moment. Boom, now I am fully unlocked to tackle the upcoming challenges. So I was like, oh, okay, that's what they're going with. Makes sense. There's a little bit of training stuff. I like that they focus in on the mentality of long distance running. That really fascinates me. I think I talked about this before. I've been watching a lot of videos about ultra marathon runners and stuff. Just really fascinating to me to peer into their brain and see how broken it is. The message of this series is very much that long distance running is a battle that breaks your mind, is the direct quote. That basically it almost becomes this game of chicken, where the more you can convince your competitors that you truly have broken your brain, that you have totally disregarded your own safety, that you are willing to run to the death. In the same way that in chicken, the best strategy is to visibly break your steering wheel and say, I cannot even turn if I wanted to, so it's up to you. I really think that was very cool. I think that's like a just kind of haunting statement, basically, that you need to convince both yourself and others that you truly have no limits in order to win this psychological battle. Really cool stuff. But they don't get like too depraved with it. I think there is a world where you make that into something really horrifying, and you really kind of lean into this is a sport done by like unwell people or something. Not that I even really think that that's true or that accurately reflects real running culture, but it felt like they were kind of like flirting with that feeling. They were flirting with this being almost like psychological horror. But no, they skew, again, more positive core, just like Harukaze Mound. This is a series that relishes in a lightheartedness, a joy, a feeling of camaraderie. When they get into the actual racing, again, there's this almost like subvertiveness to scenes where it looks like people are going to have some deep conflict and I'm going to outrun you today. But then, oh, guess what? They're actually good buds and they're cheering each other on and they just both want to run a good race. They've been playing that card pretty steadily, and Harukaze Mound, I think, sometimes goes into that mode as well. And basically, I think it's just sort of a counterpoint to a lot of more edgy sports shonen, which was our standard for quite a long time. But I think Haikyuu was very positive core in this way, if I'm right. I haven't read Haikyuu yet. So I think it's pretty much all just trying to catch like the momentum in the fan base of Haikyuu. Anyways, despite that, there were also some rivalries that had some actual tension, some actual resentment, really something to prove. Then they get into the actual running battles. The first one is like, oh, the vice captain was always thought of as a very reserved and defensive runner. He wasn't the type to overexert himself. He certainly looks like the studious, glasses-wearing, calm and collected type. But then, boom, they've all radically retrained themselves for this race in order to surpass their opponent's expectations. He's actually now a super aggressive get out in front of the pack type runner, and this fucks with the guy on the enemy team who is trying to keep his pace and realizes, oh my god, this guy's like really going for it. I wasn't prepared for that. And I was like, all right, that's pretty cool. I think that's like a good case study of what this manga could be. That sort of strategic surprise and tactic and counter-tactic and counter-counter-tactic. Typical sports shonen stuff. This is how they translate it into running. And I think it's okay. There wasn't anything really amazing. The depiction of it was also kind of plain. There wasn't any kind of like major transcendental jaw-dropping moment. And I kind of was just like, well, what else could they do? Because it's kind of only like, oh, he's running faster than I thought he would. Or, oh, he's running slower than I thought he would. And that's like it, right? So like kind of getting to this big moment. Oh, this is what the running battles will look like. This is the meat of our series. This is what it's mostly going to be. And then just being like, huh. I don't think is the mode you should be in. But it is okay. Like, it's not bad. It's just kind of like, I thought they would have had more. I thought they would have, like, come up with something more. And then this leads into the next stage. The next stage is a very short stage. So it's all about your fastest runner. And I'm kind of like, okay. It's either going to be, wow, he's faster than I thought. Or, ooh, even though it's a short, speedy section, he's more conservative than I thought. And he was able to accelerate in the end in a way I didn't expect. It's like, what else is there? It's literally like a one-dimensional sport. Like, you're just running in a straight line. And all you can do is speed up or slow down. Like, am I crazy? Because when I say stuff like that, I'm like, surely I'm simplifying it too much. Surely I'm ignoring some of the intricacies and strategic depth of running. But it's like, am I? You gotta prove to me that there's more. Because, like, isn't it just like you choose your speed and you run it? I don't know. We'll see. But for now, we'll give it a B+. I think it is, like, pretty good. I'm enjoying the art. It's fun. Could be more impactful. Characterization's fun. Could be more interesting. Actual depiction of tactics and strategy. Interesting. Could be more interesting. But, yeah, it's not bad. Now let's talk about the Ultimate Exorcist Kiyoshi. I did think that one series was going to end this month, but I thought it was going to be this. I thought it was going to be the end of the Ultimate Exorcist, the ultimate chapter of the Ultimate Exorcist. But instead it was like Kill Blue took the bullet. It jumped in front of the swinging axe and said, "No me." Which is crazy because Kill Blue did nothing to build up a resolution, whereas this, it felt like, has been working towards a resolution all year and then was given a second chance at life. It's insane. I was, the whole time I was kind of coping and being like, well, I suppose they could come up with another Demon Lord. Yeah, until someone makes an even more powerful Demon Lord and keep things going. Oh, well, they did. Actually, they did say there was 3 Demon Lords. And there was another one that, like, killed his parents. Ooh, that's foreshadowing. Ooh, there's, like, a little world building with, like, the idea of angels. We were told about angels. We haven't met an angel. There's maybe still some stuff to do. And the whole time I'm like, I'm just coping. And then I even really tried to get my head around and think, would I even want them to continue? Because they had every character go through like a substantial climactic arc and like come to profound realizations about themselves and feel like they've achieved self-actualization or whatever. Do I really want them to be like, oh, guess what? There's another Demon Lord. Now we all got to fight again, and just kind of retread those motions. And, oh no, I'm glad that it's ending. I'm glad that it's ending because that's a good ending. But that was cope too. I was trying to look on the bright side of it, but I really wanted it to continue, and it is really going to continue. We have the big finale of all finales. I thought Kiyoshi defeats Ashura Roth. He achieves some sort of orgasm in the end by truly fighting someone more powerful than him. It's very weird, but I liked it. It's like really unique, I think, in terms of how it relates the main character to this major villain, you know? Sometimes they've like hinted at these weird kind of like psychosexual tensions between the MC and the villain. That's somewhat of a staple, but here they go so far with it. They have this weird moment of compassion and honesty right at the end. It really, really felt like it was ending. It had that sense of like finality to it. It had that sense of there's no way we could ever top this. They even brought back the demon dude from the very first chapter, back when this series seemed to be like a totally different genre, and had him have a little comedy bit. So it's like, that's gotta be it, man. Then everybody is celebrating and praising Kiyoshi. It's just unilateral happiness. It's really nice, not super interesting, not super unique. And that's what started to make me think, hey, wait a minute. Maybe this isn't ending? Maybe this isn't actually ending? And then they have this whole sports fest thing. Kiyoshi returns to school. It goes back to that mode, which we haven't been in a while, of like Kiyoshi as this sort of outcast who's just trying to make friends and have a normal school life, while also being the ultimate exorcist. He gets a gold star for enjoying his sports fest. And I was like, nah, it is ending, because they're going full circle and bringing this back and showing that he has a truly complete and happy life. And it was really nice. And that chapter was a little more interesting. It had more kind of fun character moments and stuff. And we find out that he's lost his powers as an exorcist. And I'm like, this shit's ending, man. They're going to say next chapter is the last one. But no. They're like, okay, we're going to send you to like an exorcist hospital. And then we see the one woman, one of the cross paladins, saying that she's going to step down from being a cross paladin and is nominating Kiyoshi. So now it's like, oh, he's getting nominated into this position, but he doesn't have his powers back. Well, that sounds like a plot. That sounds like something we're going to see. We're going to see a conflict, too, where maybe he thinks he's actually retired now, but they're trying to bring him back in. And maybe he thinks that was it, but we're going to find out there's other demons out there. And the way that they've just kind of like subtly inched out the cast a little bit, where a bunch of characters that showed up for this big ultimate, or I thought ultimate, showdown against the Black Parade now are gonna be like recurring, and I was like, oh my god, they really are gonna keep going. It's not just cope. The cope turned into hope. So yeah, I'm really, really excited because that was such a fantastic arc. So many great battles, so many great character moments. Uh, and I thought that's it. That's the big finale. And to know that like it could just go anywhere from here, I'm really excited, man. I'm really excited. I've really come to love this series, love these characters, love the art style, love the combat, everything. And we're gonna get more. It's actually gonna keep going. I'm gonna give it an A plus for the month, and I can't wait to see what's next. All right, now let's talk about Nice Prison, which also is in its big final battle against the fated enemy that is basically the only thing that's been built up at this point. And I don't know if there's any hope or cope or anything for the series to break free of that and to burst into a brand new arc. Moreover, I don't really know if I wanted to or needed to. I did kind of like come around on the series a little bit. At the beginning, I found it very grating, not that funny. But then it started getting into a mode that I thought was better, where it was sort of like the model, where you actually do have like fighting and you have power scaling and transformations and Nakama gathering and all those battle shonen things, but you just present it in like a goofy, nonsensical way and have like tsukomying and riffing and that sort of stuff. And I'm like, yeah, this works. I enjoy this. But then I started finding it grating again. Just like, I don't know. And maybe it really just kind of comes down to the mood I read it in. But I felt like they kind of got fired up for a bit, and then the ideas just sort of started petering out. And more it was like, as they tried to establish the actual like plot line and the actual scope and characters and stuff, it segued more and more into a mode of like not doing battle shonen stuff but goofy, but rather doing battle shonen stuff but the characters tsukomi it and they just kind of riff on it. And to me, that's not as fun because you're still kind of just like doing the beats of it without really any like subversion or anything crazy, you know? And maybe you're like, what's the difference? But like, here's an example. Early on, they set up like the prisoner elite four boss characters that they'd have to take down. And one shows up and he's really goofy and stuff. And he's riding around in the palanquin on top of a porta potty. They beat him, and then it turns out another one of the Elite Four was in the porta potty and is beaten summarily without doing anything additional because they destroy the porta potty. And then it shows like two of the Elite Four were taken down. And they're like, huh? So it's like breaking free of the structure a little bit, playing with your expectations of the structure and subverting it for comedy. Whereas here, now, it's like they're going up against the super dark prisoner or whatever. We find out that he's the main character's dad and stuff. And they do this kind of like backstory and exposition. And he explains his grand plot. There's the title drop, the nice prison, whatever. But it's like they don't break free of the structure of him explaining his villainous plot. They just do it, but they have the characters like riff on it and tsukomi and stuff, right? And so there's no real subversion. There's no real like, whoa, it's going in a different direction than I thought. It's just sort of like going in that direction, but with laughs, you know? It's the difference between Space Cop as parody of Robocop and the riff tracks of Robocop. You know what I'm saying? You picking up what I'm laying down? I don't know. It's like fine. There's still some laughs. I think it has gotten funnier in general over this run, or maybe my IQ has just lowered to match it or something. But I'm still having like fun with it. It's just like it does like get tedious, and I'm just kind of like, oh, okay, now we're gonna do like this type of joke, and it just no. So yeah, now we're heading into that big final battle. Sure. We'll give it a B- for the month. I don't know. It had me for a bit there, and now it's kind of losing me again. And it's just sort of like we're heading into the big like climax battle, but I don't really feel like we're heading into the big like comedy climax. Like, take a look at Roboco. God, just take a look at Roboco. What a great series. They had a big climactic plot line about the Robocos from all the different dimensions and stuff. They've had a few of those, really. And those are like significant plot moments with like action scenes and crazy shit happening, and you're like, wow, and they're like multi-chapter arcs. But it's also like really funny. And the idea of the different genre Robocos is really funny, and all the parodies they do are really funny. And it's like you're hitting those two heights simultaneously. Whereas here it's like, oh, okay, they're gonna have the big final battle, but like, where's the big final laughs? You know? I don't know. We'll see. All right. Next, we've got Akane-banashi. This whole month was delving deep into Karashi's performance. He is performing an original Rakugo story that he himself wrote, but it feels like a Rakugo classic insofar as it's set in the Edo period, and it has the kind of like stock characters and the sort of stock misunderstanding based plotline and blah 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 blah. But he's also modeled it around like a more recent phenomenon, that it's all about an actor kind of getting canceled, and a dirt reporter trying to get a scoop on an affair potentially. Very interesting. I really liked how they kind of set up his strategy in building that. But then when he gets into the performance, it's like, oh, okay, like he has this kind of gimmick, he has this real ingenuity, he's come up with this whole scheme of his pseudo-modern classic, but his performance is actually like really traditional, really deep to the core of Rakugo. And so you get into his training and this lingering question in his mind of why do all of this with Rakugo? He's been a successful comedian. He could be a podcaster. He could be a blogger. He could be an actor, whatever. What is the innate quality of Rakugo that he is trying to express by doing this, which of course gets into this real core of Rakugo. And in doing so, they explore his relationship with Senmeitai, who's the dude with the big square head, who's shown up a few times and is referred to as one of the top Rakugo performers in the whole series. So he's got a lot of aura, he's got a lot of significance. We've been excited for him. I really liked how he was depicted here. I really like just this constant kind of flashing back to Karashi's training. I love how he's contrasted with Hikaru's mentor, who's also very high up, Iken, but notably on a lower level in the world of Rakugo, and is always kind of highlighted as a multi-career professional, that he's also this like noteworthy actor and stuff. And you see that really reflecting in his advice to Hikaru, that he wants to make Hikaru as well kind of this multimedia all-star. Whereas here, Karashi, by contrast, Sanmeitai, is all about Rakugo as an art. And they get deep into it, the idea of how to create the interiority of a character. How do you really embody the mind and body of the character that you're presenting? His philosophy of you start by doing the exterior movements and allow that to like infect your thinking and stuff. Really cool. Talking about how Karashi may struggle because his intelligence is a shackle. That foolishness is the key to embodying foolish characters. But at the same time that Karashi almost is able to encounter like a zen-like state of this sort of foolishness by the diligence of him doing chores, polishing himself as a human. His modern classic, of course, is a hit. This is a triumphant performance for him. The style of monkey see, monkey do, again, in this series' most brilliant move, having the character plot reflecting in the Rakugo plot, each of them kind of mirroring and explicating each other, while still also being a performance that you're totally buying, is winning over the audience, winning over the judges. In the end, he is truly like the classics warrior at this moment, even though he, in other ways, is so unconventional and he's doing this original plotline. It feels like he's been able to marry those two instincts and has truly arrived at like the heart of the art form. Really beautiful, brilliant stuff. And I think he's gonna win. Okay, I've become convinced that Akane is actually gonna take another L here. Hikaru won when they were Zenza. I think now Karashi will win when they're Futsume. And then, I don't know. At first I was like, this is kind of the conclusion of these characters, maybe. And it's going to be Akane kind of breaking away from them. But no. I think there's going to be a round 3 where Akane wins. When they're both promoted to whatever it is. I can't remember the top rank. But once they're both that, once they're all 3 of them are that, sorry, they'll have a third contest that Akane will win. So I think Akane is going to lose here. One, because, yeah, it sets up that she finally gets the ultimate victory when they're all true pros. 2, because Sanmite is put at this, like, pinnacle of the art form. Both just in terms of, like, the power scaling and who he's kept in company with, but then also his depiction over these chapters in the flashbacks to him training Karashi. He is being presented as like an absolute. He is being presented as someone who has totally mastered and seized his style of Rakugo. So to invoke that and to suggest that Karashi has now fully embodied this, and then to have Karashi lose, I think is like not good. I think that would be a little disappointing and a little diminishing of that character. Finally, I think it's just kind of like Akane in this arc is being depicted as she still needs more pieces. I'm so curious to see what she's learned after her first performance in this competition didn't go so great. How has she changed it? How has she escalated it? Whatever. I think she will win over Shomei, pictured here. He'll agree to teach her a story. They'll establish that connection. He'll acknowledge her strengths. But I think it's going to be like this, you know, why have her triumphant and then learn from Shomei? It should be she falls short and then learns from Shomei. And this is the process of her putting together this more complete version of herself. So yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. And kind of thinking that way, I am really satisfied with Karashi's performance. It did feel like a winning performance. It had that gravity. It had that feeling of just everything coming to bear. But it does put Akane's performance in a weird spot. Like, already I'm so confused as to what it's going to be. She's in this weird zombified state. She was dealt one of her biggest L's in the series so far when her overwhelming roller coaster Rakugo failed to leave the impression that she wanted it to. And she can't go for laughs. She can't just make them laugh. So I don't know. What will happen, we will see. We'll give it an S- for the month, though. Really good stuff. Can't wait for Akane to do her Rakugo. All right. Finally, we have Kagurabachi, which I've really been enjoying lately. This whole Kamunabi raid, I think, has been a ton of fun. Basically using this as an excuse, using this as like a perfectly justified excuse to just start throwing in tons and tons of characters to this very well structured battle through these layers of security. Basically kind of like an Ain's lobby setup where you can have a bunch of characters fighting on different floors and then, of course, falling through floors and interfering with each other's battles. Also sort of like Ain's lobby, a place where it makes sense for there to be a wide range of pretty crazy people stationed and ready to fight. And basically this whole month was just kind of like crazy battles happening under those conditions. The ambition is certainly flaring up again. Kagurabachi, despite really being one of the new pillars of Shonen Jump, really emerging into popularity, it got a New Yorker profile recently. Did you folks know this? The New Yorker writing about our humble little weekly Shonen Jump? This is a big aside. I thought the article was like okay. Definitely some flaws, definitely some critiques I have of it. If you go read it, maybe you'll know what it is. Things that I've ranted on about before. But it is one of the few times where I've seen mainstream media acknowledge, hey, Dragon Ball, global hit. Naruto, global hit. One Piece now, culturally dominant. Jujutsu Kaisen, Chainsaw Man, and now this coming up next, Kagurabachi. Did you know that they're all from the same magazine? Yu-Gi-Oh!, Death Note, Bleach. It's all the same magazine. Hey, isn't that kind of like noteworthy? That, you know, this collection of cultural properties that each have like completely taken over the imaginations of American teens actually all come from the exact same physical magazine. I really think this is like under remarked upon in the West. People do not worship Weekly Shonen Jump enough. People do not recognize that this is a cultural driving force on the tier of Disney or Marvel or LucasArts. Or really, honestly, beyond those things, like wielding several franchises that are on par with the MCU. Moreover, this is something that is still reliably a hit maker. That Jujutsu Kaisen is grossing billions of dollars. Demon Slayer is grossing billions of dollars. And these are franchises that just straight up did not exist until they started getting written in Weekly Shonen Jump. Whereas, in the West, we have the 27th Superman movie is our cultural touchpoint. The 89th Batman movie coming soon. It's like, we should be chomping at the bit to try to figure out how to replicate this sort of success. Because all we can do is regurgitate the same 12 characters over and over again. Whereas in Japan, the institutions like Weekly Shonen Jump are putting out new properties, new characters, new settings, new opportunities every single week. And all of it is still dismissed by most of the big business in the West as like this lump sum anime, this mysterious black box called anime that sometimes just inexplicably shoots out money, but there's no way to predict how it will behave. Bitch, this is what I'm out here doing. I'm talking about this for hours and hours at end. Because you can predict it. It's the most observable thing in the world. It's the most transparent process right before our eyes of the meritocracy of manga fighting their way up the table of contents in the magazine and then blossoming into multimedia empire franchises that take over the world. If I was so inclined, if I had the chops, if I was working at Viz or Cool Stuff or Hot Topic or any of these people that are itching to get a bite at the big pie that is anime manga spending in the West, I would be doing a better job than any of these idiots. This New Yorker article is like 20 years too late. Going, oh my god, guys, did you know it's all the same magazine? Did you know if you look at the magazine now, you might be able to discern what the future hits will be and get in early? My god, that's crazy. It's like trillions of dollars, like literally like trillions of dollars on the table, guys. Maybe you should pay a little more attention. I've been paying attention. I'm just some schlub. I just like manga. If I liked money half as much as I liked manga, I would be making a killing here. Just like the characters of Kagurabachi, which is apparently what we've been talking about. So yeah, lots of crazy fights. We get more into Kiri's fighting style. She's the descendant of the creator of the white purity style, but she resents her lineage and instead fights with this like ever-present giant blade that she just kind of like slowly but smoothly swings around in concert. So the exact opposite of the quick draw, quick sheath type thing. No sudden movement, but instead just this like flowing, overwhelming thing. I thought that was really cool. Really great fusion of like character building, lore building, and the immediate like choreography of the fight scene. Really, really good. I don't know. It's kind of like they nailed Samura so much. They made Samura such a cool character and got me so caught up with his whole emotional arc that now it's kind of like I'm on the other side. And all of these things that at first maybe, like 50 chapters ago, I would have been like, okay, I get it. We'll see. Now the aura is being farmed. Now I am planting my aura seeds diligently. It's won me over. All sorts of stuff happening. We meet Uruha, who is one of the constricted enchanted blade bearers, his little brother. There's all sorts of complexes between them. Again, nothing too groundbreaking, nothing too crazy or interesting, but they always subvert it in a way that really reminds me of like Western movies, which he says in this New Yorker profile is a big influence, is very clearly a big influence. So here, I think it's really fun. Two of the top tier Kaminabi guys show up, and they do these really strange, awkward introductions to kind of needle Uruha and his brother, saying, well, I'm the one that killed this person. I killed him by doing this. I also killed this person, and I killed this person. My buddy here killed these people. You probably really want to fight us now. Just because they're like battle perverts and they want to establish the stakes so they can get the best fight. And just this kind of like weird arc disruption where you kind of see, oh, it's like a brother complex thing. He's got to like prove himself to his older brother, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, it kind of becomes this like whole other thing too. Yeah, I don't know. Really solid stuff. Not like crazy interesting on a greater narrative level. Basically all these fights kind of just amount to like nothing, it's in the end it's gonna be a wash, right? Like how it's gonna end. It's gonna end with like Chihiro and Samura in the chamber with the sealed enchanted blade staring down the leaders of the Kaminabi. All of this other stuff is just kind of like aura farming and having cool characters do cool fights purely for the sake of it, and that's fine. Don't get me wrong. That's more than fine. That's fine and dandy. That's great. I'm having a blast. But I am kind of interested in like I said with Sakamoto Days. Like if you're gonna spend time doing these kind of lower level fights, these fights for the sake of fights, just enjoying them, that's great. But you should be like charging something in the background, so that afterwards there's gonna be something that like really hits emotionally. Big revelation, big character development moment, big tragedy, big triumph, something. So we'll see. But yeah, we'll give it an A for the month. Very solid. And I think that's it. Pretty sure that's it. Yep. Oh boy. Oh, I had so much fun making that. And it's still light out. I can still go and enjoy the nice weather on my day off. Maybe go for a bite. Very excited for the next month of Jump. Here is our tier list from last month. And here is our tier list this month. Some shuffling around of the upper ranks, but nothing too crazy. A lot of stuff landing in the A tier this month, which is interesting. And then I think this is also like the most discrete the lower tiers have been. We had stuff landing B+, B, B-, C+, and C-, which I don't think has really happened before. So yeah, that's all. See ya next time. Thanks as always in advance for comments. There's a few people that always leave really good comments. I'm sorry if I don't get a chance to reply to them directly, but I always look forward to reading those, so please keep leaving them. And I'm really bad about asking for this, but lately I've been trying to get in the habit of doing the YouTuber thing. If you enjoyed this, if you enjoy me rambling on about Jump, give it a like, hit subscribe, share it with other buddies of yours that also like Jump. I got very passionate about it during the Kagurabachi segment there, but I really truly love Jump, and I think as big a deal as it is, it honestly should still be an even bigger deal. So this is me doing my part in celebrating this magazine. All right. Yeah. Goodbye.